Today's guest is Erik Scott. Erik is a systems engineer turned mindset coach. He's also the founder of Energized Dad. He decided to go to Colombia for stem cell injections to heal his back versus having surgery. He takes us through his journey on what that entailed, the whole process, and how it turned out. Be sure to tune in to today's podcast. I've got a question for you. Who's the person you're being? Are you satisfied? It's okay. This is a judge-free zone, and it's exactly why I started the show. Welcome to Be the Person, a podcast for the brave and the curious who are ready to explore who they are fully created to be. I'm your host, Randall, the adventurous one leading this investigative journey of transformation. By delving into topics and asking unexpected questions, we will discover the keys for unlocking our true potential and being our best selves today. You may be surprised by what you find when you let go of fear in order to discover the answers of becoming the person you were made to be. Welcome to Be the Person podcast. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Erik Scott. Erik is an engineer by day and runs Energized Dads by night. He has a really great story. I have enjoyed getting to know Erik and learning about his journey through fitness and also rehabilitation. He's used stem cells, which I was interested in, and wanted to hear and also have you hear about his journey with that. Erik, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Ann. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be able to share the story and provide some value out there to the listeners.
Yeah, well, we're excited that you're here today. Well, tell us a little bit about you, what you do today, and really how you got there.
Yeah, well, growing up, fitness and outdoors has always been a part of my life. I was involved in sports and various activities. And, over the past 28 years, I've been involved in various fitness modalities from, standard type gyms to CrossFit, strength and conditioning. I've done some rucking events to honor some fallen military members and raise money for the Green Beret Foundation. So with that said, it's put a lot of stress on my joints and my body. And I'm also a brown belt in jujitsu. So I've been training jujitsu the past 12 years, and that has a certain amount of payload on your body. Because of that, I've encountered various issues with my back over time, and it just started adding up. Right. But kind of, it's an evolutional process where, you really have to listen to your body and kind of think about recovery in a different way.
Yeah, and so it sounded you were telling me about a back injury that you had. Was that 5 years ago?
Yeah, it was really cured this past year, but it spanned from probably 2016 through 2021, a good 5 to 6 years of extreme back pain. Um, it was very hard to sleep at night. I tossed and turned. So every time I moved, there was a lot of back pain. When I woke up in the morning, it took about an hour just to be able to move around. And sometimes just putting my feet on the ground, getting out of bed, hey, you're alive, right? That should be something you're excited about. It was a struggle. And then knowing I had a fitness class within the next hour, I was always debating, hey, can this be done? So it just took a long time for that process to kick in. And I think with men, sometimes we really want to avoid a doctor, right? And not seek out medical advice until it's absolutely necessary. And in this case, growing up in, the various fitness modalities I was involved with, you're not taught a lot about actual recovery work and what recovery means. And I seeked out, various medical advice from chiropractors, massage therapy, back experts, and kind of went on this evolution to figure out what was going wrong, and was able to understand what was really the problem with my back when I worked with the wellness center out of Austin, Texas. I really try to focus on working with medical professionals that have some sort of athletic background. And in this particular case, the gentleman was a former Special Forces medic, 18 Delta and a Green Beret. and had since retired and was running a wellness center and did stem cell treatment himself. And that was one of the reasons why I seeked out this center. But we did an MRI in 2021 and realized I had 3 herniated discs, 3 compressed discs, canal stenosis, which is your vertebrae seizing together. And then the lower part of my back had arthritic degeneration. So that was, it was a big awakening, right? And through that, there were some recovery topics discussed and so forth. My chiropractor had advised to seek out stem cell therapy because he didn't feel he could do much more for me in terms of relieving the compression on the discs, doing different work on my back. I worked with massage therapy experts, and we're at a point where I knew personally I didn't want surgery, right? So I didn't really go to a spinal surgeon to talk it over. I just felt that course of action was going to lead to some sort of surgery or physical therapy, which I was already doing. And I was going to seek out regenerative medicine.
Okay. And so when you looked at that and you looked at stem cell out of the clinic in Texas, what were some options there?
Yeah, there was definitely options to receive the stem cell therapy in Texas, eh, but it would have taken a lot more time and injections and potential money out of pocket to get to a point where if I went out of the country to these various clinics, or some in Panama and in Colombia and even Tijuana right now, Mexico, that, their treatment plan is a 5-day plan that you're there, and you have a detailed treatment plan. They know you're coming. You've reviewed it with the doctors and so forth. So I seeked out that particular option, and the clinic I chose specialized in back recovery, and they had an orthopedic surgeon on staff, right? So there's a whole process associated with it. But yeah, that's the general direction I went. And we did some interviews. I talked to the staff there. They reviewed my MRIs and were fairly confident that I could be helped. Right. And there's a whole process involved, like I'm saying. And, once I started doing this, though, medical professionals here, family and friends were like, "What are you doing? This sounds way far fetched. Like, there's no proof that this works. Plus you're going to Colombia. That sounds dangerous, you know." And I said, "Well, you got to trust me that I'm doing the right amount of research, and I'm just not going to show up at a clinic and hope the best happens."
Right. So you did a lot of research and you talked with the doctors. You really had a solid plan before you ever decided or went to the clinic in Colombia. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. What the facility did in Medellin, Colombia, BioAccelerator is the name. They created a detailed plan, right, based on my physical activity, my injuries, kind of where I'm at, and I was going to receive 9 injections in my back, and they were going to be focused on the specific areas where I had the herniated discs, where I had the compressed discs, where I had the canal stenosis, and the arthritic degeneration in my lower back, and kind of just put me on a table under local anesthesia and match their imaging software and capabilities up with what they saw in my MRI to get injections to the specific area. Now, I reviewed that plan with the wellness center here in Texas. The gentleman that was doing stem cell therapy himself with his clients, and he highly thought that it was a good plan. He recommended it, and felt that I would get more in the 5 days there at the clinic in Medellin than I would be able to work with him over a certain amount of time. And the quality is going to be much higher, right? Because these are MSC stem cells from the umbilical cord. They're known as the golden cells, the Wharton jelly. So it's the best of the best, right? And another thing too is in Colombia and these other locations, like Panama and so forth, the local government supports these types of regenerative medicine uh, facilities, right? And here you don't really have that support with the FDA.
Yeah, there's definitely some differences. I've been researching a little bit since our initial conversation because this is something I was interested in personally as well. And I knew there was a difference between what you could do in the US and what you could do in other parts if you went to a different country. And that was the big one that you can use stem cells from an umbilical cord So they're brand new stem cells, and the amount that you can get injected here, you can get stem cells, but it seemed like it was a much, much lower count, and it's not FDA approved to do the umbilical cord. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's a quality thing as well. In the clinic in Colombia, they were able to tell me how many stem cells I received after the treatment was done, down to the last number. Right here, I can't tell you if that information is going to be available if you decide to do it, within the U.S. But part of that too is just not having full support of the FDA to properly develop stem cells as regenerative medicine, right? Now, a lot of the companies that own the facilities outside the US are US companies, right? Oh,
Yeah, I
yeah.
found that too. A lot of them had clinics here, but then they do the stem cells out of another country.
Yeah, the US doctors go back and forth. They've got support from the government there. There's physicians from the US there. They also are supporting, local medical professionals in those areas in Colombia. And it's a collection of highly qualified people. I could tell you when I walked in the clinic, I didn't feel like a number. I didn't feel like this patient that, some doctor was going to come in the room and talk to you for 8 minutes
Okay.
and tell you what was wrong with you and go away. For example, I also had both knees treated, my elbow and my shoulder. I felt both shoulders needed to be treated, but I was evaluated when I arrived on site, and the sports medicine doctor, the orthopedic surgeon, and they analyzed both shoulders, and they said, no, we think you really only need treatment on one shoulder. Right. So it's not about, hey, it's a revenue thing, right? We're just going to treat exactly what the problem is and go from there. So, another thing too is I was really hesitant because anytime you're opened up, it's never the same in terms of surgery, right? So, with as much focus as I put on health and fitness over the past 28 years, and I've had ups and downs, it hasn't been a nice, beautiful ride, for various reasons, injuries, food choices and whatnot. Sometimes I've fallen off the correct path, but I get back on the right path. And in this case, what the doctors told me at the clinic was I was a really good candidate because I was healthy and I was fit
Mhm.
and I hadn't had previous surgeries. I wasn't in a wheelchair per se, right? Where their job was much more difficult, in terms of my existing condition, right? It was just about the injuries themselves.
Right now, there's a lot of talk about protein and how important it is for maintaining and gaining muscle. It really is important, and quality matters. That's why I love ButcherBox. It's all organic, grass fed. Every month, you can pick what cuts you want, or you can choose every other month or every third month. They're giving our listeners $50 off their first order. I'll put the link in the show notes and definitely check it out. Well, I'm sure everybody wants to know, because you had this done almost a year ago. Tell us your progress right now. Like, how do you feel? What has been the outcome?
Yeah. So the treatment was done in April of 23, and I had an updated MRI done, and that was reviewed with a local clinic here and a comparison report done. And that was also shared with the clinic in Colombia. And they identified I had fluid back in the herniated disc, which is really rare. The herniated discs were gone. The compressed discs were healed. The canal stenosis was healed. And I was just dealing with inflammation at this point, right? So phenomenal results within 1 year. And I was working with a chiropractor in Austin, Texas. And, this particular chiropractor had never really talked to anyone or dealt with any kind of client that had stem cell therapy. And I showed her the report and she said, this is phenomenal. But with what we're taught here and what we see with treatments in the US at any level in medicine, you never hear of canal stenosis being cured. It's just, you don't hear about this stuff.
And how do
So
you,
that really, yeah, that gave me the affirmation that, hey, this is, I've got the data, right?
just it's exciting to hear that that was reversed, and Are you able to go back and exercise? I know fitness was a big part of your life. Is that something that you're active now and doing what you love?
Yes, I'm still active in physical fitness in the gym and jujitsu. I did have to do a fair amount of actual physical therapy on myself after the treatment. That was kind of a post-treatment plan. And, I dug deep into that. So I know all about recovery now. So this journey has really taught me a lot about myself and a lot about the limits of what I can do with fitness. Right. And currently I have no limits unless they're self-imposed. So because of that, I needed deeper self reflection, and I had fallen off my nutrition plan more than needed. Right. So, getting feedback from friends, family, and even my wife, I seeked out guidance of a coach, and we worked together to develop a nutrition plan, a macro plan for me that put me in a calorie deficit to lose weight on a certain amount of protein per day in grams and a certain amount of fats and carbs. And I lost 20 pounds in 3 months during that process. And I followed a fitness nutrition plan designed by the coach. I was held accountable with a weekly check in. And, that really drove me to improve myself beyond where I was at. So I think in addition to the stem cell treatment and then jumping on a program with the coach to get me back to the ideal state as I could be. So it's been a wonderful process.
That's great. So now you're at your ideal weight, you're feeling good. Um, Tell me a little bit about the process before you went. Because you prep, it sounds like before. I think some people think, oh my gosh, I get stem cell, it's the magic cure. But it can be, but you also put in the work. You did an anti-inflammatory diet before, and then you did a lot of rehab after. Is that correct?
That is correct. And there is quite a bit of pre-work in order to be successful, right? And it's up to the patient, to the client. You're going to be guided by the clinic. But in my case, I was asked to go on an anti-inflammatory diet 3 months before treatment, or ideally whatever the ideal time frame is based on this was my particular scenario. And that was a plant forward diet, basically, right? And you're guided on what foods cause inflammation, what foods accelerate cell therapy, cellular reproduction. And, alcohol and coffee was totally taken away. And a lot of meats were taken away. It was a plant forward diet. It's not high in protein. There's various sources of protein that I could get. But the idea there is by the time I show up to the clinic, I need the free radicals out of my body. I need the chronic inflammation, not the acute inflammation. Acute inflammation becomes from various injuries. Maybe you cut yourself, or maybe, through a 1 hour intensive, fitness journey, program, that you're stretching your muscles, you're doing different things to the fiber. That's acute. Chronic inflammation is from food sources or maybe pollution, external kind of in the air, right? And the idea is to get rid of as much of that as possible, because when the stem cells are injected into the areas where the injuries are, that's by design. But what the stem cells will look for is a problem to fix. And if the first thing they see is inflammation, they're going to go after that, right? And that's not what you want, right? You want it to really, you want the regenerative medicine to really focus on the reason you're there, the actual, in my case, the back injury, the knee injury, the elbows, and the shoulder. Yep.
Yeah. And you had a lot of motivation because this wasn't a cheap endeavor. Is that right?
No, it wasn't. It's tens of thousands of dollars. And in my case, I probably spent $40,000 on this effort. I'm just kind of rounding up to that number to include travel with me and my wife. But, a lot of people say, hey, that's a lot of money, but what's your life worth? What's just feeling good every day worth? Right. And, that could vary based on the person. Right. But living in pain for 5 years, I was like, this is not working anymore. Right. My quality of life was going downhill. It was affecting my career, affecting relationships. Your biggest recovery tool is your sleep. If you can't get good sleep, that's, you know, not good at all.
Yeah. I think stem cell is definitely the path of the future. The US is, the FDA makes it a little bit slower process, but I think in our lifetime, this is going to be take over what a lot of surgeries do now. And I was curious. I think I told you that you gave me some clinics in Mexico, and that was the one I called. There's a lot of them around once I started looking, and it was a very reputable one right across the border in San Diego. And I was just interested because I had a torn hamstring. And when you told me that number, I was like, I wonder, it was specific because you had a pretty severe back injury,
Yes.
and it was a very specific place that you needed to go. But I was just curious for other ones, what was that cost? And so I did a call with them this week, and it was about $17,000. Also a 5 day. You go and you do a lot of prep before. They do a lot of biohacking things like
Yeah.
ozone therapy, PMF, um, injection. So lots of different things to get you ready for the
Yes.
stem cells. But yeah, it's a significant time and investment.
Yeah. Across my 5 days at BioAccelerator, day one, I was given 100 million stem cells via IV, right? Then I went into a hyperbaric chamber, right? It helps reduce inflammation. So a lot of that pre-work, even beyond what I was doing, once I got to the clinic, there was still more pre-work. And I was in a hyperbaric chamber twice. And, this is the first time that I've been able to sit down with a specialist and they went over all my MRIs in detail and told me what was going on, where I was bone on bone, where the tendons were just stretched beyond what they should be, what my limitations were. Like, for example, in a back squat, you typically go to a 90 with your hamstrings to the floor. I was advised to go 60. I said, okay, great. And he said, well, let me explain this to you, because when you're at a 60, all your muscles are engaged anyhow, right? You're there with the load on you at 6 degrees, everything's engaged. You're getting you're a workout, So it's not like, oh, if I didn't go to 90, I'm not going to get what I need. That's just proper form, right? And before you get to 90, you're at 60 anyhow. So, that was just some of the advice I got, for example. And it just, going forward, the clinic keeps contacting me. They contacted me a few months ago and said, we want to get an updated MRI. Can you go get an updated MRI? Because we want to analyze. You've done one MRI 1 year after the treatment. This is another 8 months in. Let's see where you're at right now. So we're in the process of reviewing that second MRI post-treatment.
That's great. It's just exciting to hear. You hear about it, but you don't hear a lot of people that actually have done it. So it was just really neat to have this conversation. Tell me a little bit more, because you had a lot of motivation too, because you have a 1 year old and you wanted to be able to keep up. So tell me a little bit about when we were talking about the birth, and my kids are older because they're 15 to 20. And I know at that point we had the option to save stem cells. Honestly, I didn't know anything about it at that point. You go in much more informed. Is that something you did? And tell us a little bit about why.
Yeah, our daughter is turning 1 tomorrow. And, my biggest fear was not being able to pick her off the ground when she needs me or just when I feel like it because of my back problem, right? That's just, I think, a little selfish on my behalf, right? That I've, putting fitness and all of this before, just being able to enjoy time with my family. And because of the process I went through with the stem cell therapy and the results I had seen when we were going to, the doctor visits, pre-labor, there were some services about cord banking offered
Mm.
with newborns, right? Where you could take the cord, even the placenta, if you want to, and store that in a cryo chamber as a service, right? So the umbilical cord is assigned to you. It's handled by the staff at the hospital. There's a service that brings everything needed to store that. So, and the idea there is to use it for regenerative medicine purposes for your child going forward. This is amazing. We're able to do this right now with the idea of your son or your daughter getting some therapy treatment out of it, in terms of stem cells and so forth at some point in life. And I was like, why? And I did, ring to me like, why are we able to do this, but not the rest of the therapy for adults? Right. But that's, like you said, maybe that's an evolution that'll happen at a later point. But there have been up to 80 different treatment identifications for various diseases that the cord blood can resolve, right? And you know, it is accepted by the FDA in this particular case, but it's something new. I've had some friends that have done it. That's why I learned about it. And we decided to do that. So yeah, we feel good about that.
Yeah, it was just an interesting thing. It was barely available when we had kids, but now going forward, just the amazing things. You hope you never need them, but if you do,
Yeah.
they're there. And what an amazing gift to give your child.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, we hope it's never needed. But, you know, even at some point as you're older, just to get new stem cells that are your own at birth back in your body, whether it's like an IV type solution, like I had did in day one of my treatment, there's a big win there. You know, I think there's an evolution at play here, and just we need more data points on the benefits of the service and so forth. Yeah, but it's good to see it.
Yeah. What about your daily life now? What do you do as far as health, to being healthy, for fitness?
Yeah, so I focus on having a daily process and it's discipline. It's all focused around discipline. I've been waking up before 5 a.m. for the past 20 plus years, you know, not only in my professional career across corporate America, but, you know, especially now with the family, I carve out the first hour to focus on me, build the best version of me possible. Waking up, whether it's coffee, maybe reading an article, going to the gym, getting all that done before the family wakes up. So I do that. And that really helps me ground myself and be a pillar for the family, keep my health up. And, you know, I'm still focused on macronutrients. So I'm on a macro plan. I consume a certain amount of protein per day, fats and carbs, you know, which adds up to a certain amount of calories. And it just really gives me the energy I need to be present and valuable for my family, but also in my everyday life.
I love that. I think it's so important that that first part of the day is yours because I'm a morning person too. And I know a lot of times other people, it works for them at night. It doesn't work for me at night either. Like I have to carve out that time in the day for me. And when I do it first, the rest of the day just falls in place better.
Yeah, you know, for me, the first win is if I beat the alarm clock. You know, if the alarm clock's set for 5 or 4:45 a.m. and I feel energized and awake and it's not quite the alarm clock time yet, I feel like, wow, I've won already, you know. So it's just a checkbox, right? This is great. You know, so that's kind of it's a little, you know, in what I try to do is if I don't meet these goals, I try to have consequences, right? So if I don't meet that goal of getting up early, doing the self work, it cascades everything else during the day to where it just feels off, right? That I didn't do the pre work. Now, there's some days where, you know, maybe it's a walk or a run or something like that, a little bit different, but you know, it's getting that self work in, working inwards, then go outwards.
And you help other people do that then. Tell us a little bit about Energized Dads and what you do through that program.
Yeah. So with my 28 years across various fitness modalities, doing some endurance events and jujitsu and understanding the value of anti-inflammatory diets and, you know, basic calorie consumption and, you know, just tuning nutrition input for your current daily activities, I've decided I can help people around the world with my background. So I've launched Energized Dad, and it's an online coaching approach where you know I have group-based programs. I'll work with people one-on-one, but it's really about helping people that might feel stuck in some way, right? Maybe you know you've dropped motivation because the self work has been lost. You've had to focus in other areas of your life, and you just forgot about you, and it's added up. It does add up. It takes a while, but then you get to notice it. Maybe your family members do, friends, and so forth. So the idea there with Energized Dad is to help people build the best versions of themselves and then present that person to the world, which is what I'd done. I did the inner self work even after the stem cell therapy, built the best version of me through working with the coach and then presented that person to the world. So now I'm taking all of this information, the collection of over these several decades to work with people And, and a lot of it's about accountability. Sometimes people know what they need to do. They're just not doing it because it's easier to go do something else. It's easier to pull back, right? But when you have to check in with someone who's going to hold you accountable, it changes things, right? And that's the core focus with Energized Dad. And it's to help people build the best version of themselves.
I love that because it's really why I started the podcast, to help people be the person they were created to be. What's the best way to connect with you for that program?
Through Instagram. Just send me a direct message and you can find me, Erik L. Scott, ERIKLSCOTT. Or do a keyword search for Energized Dad. But another thing there about connecting to me on Instagram is you'll see my everyday work. I'm putting out the work that I would teach in the program, right? The daily work, the exercise, the nutrition, right? The waking up early, focusing on family. It's all there, right? And the nice thing about the discipline that fitness gives you, it's evident when people see you that you've been doing some work and there's ROI there. I really like the ROI you get with health and fitness.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad that you shared with us today about stem cell, about your journey, what you're doing now. I think it'll be a benefit to a lot of people that might feel stuck, that want to know, what are my other options, just to even know there are other options out there. So I appreciate you being on today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to share the story and connect and chat with anyone that has any questions, whether it's about stem cells or about the programming I have, to build the best version of yourself. And I'm accessible, right? That's the main thing. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to Be the Person podcast. I appreciate you. And remember to hit subscribe and to leave a 5-star review. Thanks so much for joining today.